Welcome to PhotographyBB's Artistry Actions for Photoshop. I'm Dave Seram, the Editor-in-Chief of PhotographyBB, and today I'm going to demonstrate our popular Photoshop illustration action. Now, I originally created this action way back in 2007 when I was writing a Photoshop column for the P-Base magazine, and it's now been updated for Photoshop CC to further improve the effect of this action. Now, if you're like me, there are probably other forms of art beyond photography that you would love to pursue, but your comfort zone for visual expression is with your photography. Now, I always wish that I could draw, but when I put pen to paper, the results are just disastrous. So I developed a Photoshop action that would allow me to compose my art through my camera and then convert my photograph into a beautifully simulated illustration. So before we look at using this illustration action, here are some quick but important points. So before we begin, a brief word on compatibility. Due to the way that Photoshop works, these actions are not compatible with every version of Photoshop. We've created these to work on Photoshop CC 2015 and newer to utilize some of the newest innovations that Adobe has included in their more recent versions of Photoshop. Additionally, because of the way that actions work, these are only compatible with English language versions of Photoshop. Our PhotographyBB artistry actions are designed to work with a variety of image resolutions and sizes. However, due to the way that Photoshop filters work, the results will look different when running any Photoshop action on high-res versus low-res images. We have designed the PhotographyBB artistry actions to work with high-res images, either RAW or JPEG files, shot with a DSLR camera. Additionally, some of our actions include a version of the action optimized for lower-res images, either shot with a smartphone or a point-and-shoot camera. When running the action, choose either the high or low-res action option depending on the image you are working with. The ideal image size for optimal results is anywhere between 3000 to 5000 pixels along the long edge of your image. Another point to note is that our actions are entirely non-destructive. Every one of our actions will create a duplicate file, leaving your original image files completely untouched. So once you've downloaded your PhotographyBB artistry actions, your first step is to install them. Installing actions into Photoshop is relatively easy, but before you do so, I'd like to make one suggestion. I like to keep all of my Photoshop actions in one place, separate from the default download folder that your system probably receives them in when you download them for the first time. For myself, I like to create one main folder on my hard drive, in this case, the Pictures folder on my Mac. Inside this main Pictures folder, I then create 3 subfolders, one for Lightroom presets, Photos, which contains every single photograph that I have on my computer, and one more for Photoshop actions. I do this to keep everything in one place. It makes things much easier if I ever need to reinstall Photoshop one day, or even when I upgrade to a new hard drive or a new computer. This way I can just copy over either my entire Pictures folder to a new computer or just the Photoshop actions themselves. Now, this is just my personal preference, but I've found it to be a huge time saver over the years, and I would highly recommend this storage hierarchy for you too. Once you've downloaded the actions to your computer, you can now install them into Photoshop. So to do this, open Photoshop and go to the menu, Window, Actions. When the Actions panel appears, click on the little drop-down arrow menu and go to Load Actions. Then navigate to the action you would like to install and click Open. Your action will now be ready to use inside the Photoshop Actions panel. Once you've installed the PhotographyBB Dave Seram illustration action, it will appear in the Photoshop Actions palette. If you don't see the Actions palette in your toolbar, you can make it visible by going to the menu, Window, Actions. When you open the action to run it, you'll notice that you have a few choices. There's a high-res option for images 3 to 5000 pixels in size with no scaling, meaning that it will run on the full resolution of your image. The next choice is a 3 to 5000 pixel for high-res images, but this time the action will scale down your image to produce a more pronounced illustration effect, and then scale your image back up to its original resolution once the effect is complete. Now, photographers naturally worry that this degrades the quality of the image, but in this case, we downscale the image, run the effect, upscale the image, and run the effect once again. And this second repetition of the effect completely eliminates any artifacts that might have resulted from the upscaling of the image back to its original resolution. Any artifacts become blended right into the illustration, effectively becoming a part of the overall image, and the result is more pronounced and actually quite beautiful. So the final option in this action set is for low-res images, 1 to 3000 pixels in size. There's no scaling required on these low-res images, and you'll find the results with lower resolution photographs are quite painterly and rather stunning. So let's look at how this action actually works. We'll start with a photograph that you would like to convert into an illustration. I'm using this image right here of this gentleman, which is a high-res JPEG image. So I'm going to click on the high-res version with scaling so that you can see how cool this illustration will turn out. So I click on the action, and then I click the little play button here. Now, depending on the speed and specs of your computer, this may take anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes to complete. Okay, so once the action has completed, you can simply click Continue to use some of the customization options we have here. So before we do that, let's zoom in and see how this looks at 100%. Now if I hold down the Option key on a Mac or Alt key on a PC and click on the little visibility eyeball icon of the background layer, I can toggle the effect on and off so you can see the original versus the illustration. That's pretty cool, right? So we have some customization options available here in the Layers palette. Now the top folder includes a black and white conversion and 10 color options for lending different filter effects to your final image. So next is the Add Details folder, which allows you to bring back 3 levels, fine, medium, and heavy, of detail from the original image. So I can turn on Fine Details, Medium Details, and Large Details. And for this image, I'm going to leave them off, but in images with a lot of detail, such as a landscape or an urban setting, you can create several different looks by using these layers by toggling them on and also playing around with their opacity levels. So the next set here is the Illustration Layers folder, which gives you the option to soften the effect of the illustration while still retaining an illustrated look. Now this works especially well if you're working on images with faces like this one here, where you may wish to have a certain level of smoothness in the skin while still keeping that illustrated look intact. So by default, we have the softening set to 10% opacity, but if you crank that up, you can see how it smooths out the illustration, which again works great with faces. And here I'll zoom in a bit more so you can see the difference as I toggle that softening layer on and off. Okay, and that's our final image. So that's a quick demo of how to use this illustration action. Now this effect has been one of our most popular actions for years, and this latest version is our best one yet. Thank you for checking out our PhotographyBB Dave Seram illustration action demo. You can grab yours below and have lots of fun creating illustrations with your photography. Thanks again and enjoy.